Okay, everyone, squeeze in. My brother's voice, cheerful and oblivious, echoed across the perfectly manicured lawn. I stood on the patio, holding a tray of drinks, and watched as my entire family, my brothers, their wives, their perfect, smiling children, arranged themselves for the annual family photo. They had forgotten me. Again. I wasn't just left out. I was invisible. That evening, in the quiet of my own home, I looked at the family trust document on my desk, a complex legal structure I had designed to pass my wealth to their children. And with a single clear-headed phone call to my lawyer, I took my name, my money, and my future, and quietly removed them from their lives forever. This is the story of a woman who was treated like a ghost in her own family and decided to haunt them with her absence. If you believe that a person's presence is a gift, not a guarantee, subscribe now and hit the notification bell, because you are about to witness the most expensive family photo ever taken. Part 1. The scent of jasmine and grilled tri-tip hung in the warm Pasadena air. It was the 4th of July, our family's biggest annual gathering, held every year in the sprawling, beautiful backyard of my older brother, David. I, as always, was the designated helper, the orchestrator, the one who arrived early to set up, who refilled the ice chests, who made sure my nieces and nephews had sunscreen on. I was Aunt Catherine, the reliable, unmarried, childless older sister, a fixed point in their bustling, chaotic family universe. The photo moment was a sacred tradition. Just as the sun began to dip behind the San Gabriel Mountains, casting a golden, quintessentially Californian glow over everything, David would herd everyone onto the lawn. Photo time, he'd announce. This year was no different. I was in the kitchen, arranging a platter of my famous 7-layer dip, when I heard the familiar call. I smiled, wiped my hands, and picked up the tray of drinks I had prepared, assuming I had a minute before I needed to join. I walked out onto the patio just as the professional photographer they'd hired was getting into position. I saw my brother, David, his arm around his wife, Susan. My younger brother, Michael, was trying to get his twin boys to stop wrestling. Their wives were there, my mother, even the ancient family golden retriever was there, panting happily at their feet. They were all smiling, a perfect tableau of multi-generational family bliss. I stood there, holding the tray, waiting for someone to notice, for David to say, "Wait, where's Catherine? Get in here, Kath." He didn't. No one did. The photographer raised his camera. "Okay, big smiles everyone," he called out. And they all smiled, their perfect, happy smiles, as the camera clicked. Click, click, click. 3 perfect photos of my entire family, with me standing 10 feet away, a silent, invisible servant. The moment was so surreal, so utterly and profoundly humiliating, that I couldn't even move. They hadn't just forgotten me in the chaos, they had looked right past me. I was a part of the scenery, as functional and unphotographable as the patio furniture. The photographer lowered his camera. The perfect family broke apart, laughing, heading for the food and drinks I had just brought out. No one said a word. The moment had passed. I was not a part of their picture. A cold, quiet, and utterly unshakable decision formed in my mind. For my entire life, I had been the silent benefactor, the supportive sister, the fun aunt. I had built my life around them, assuming, foolishly, that my quiet contributions were seen and valued. But a picture, as they say, is worth 1,000 words. This one had only one. Goodbye. Will this heartless oversight lead to a shocking karmic reckoning? This story of a hidden legacy is just getting started. If you're hooked by this story of karma, subscribe now so you don't miss the next chapter. Part 2. My family is the picture of old money Pasadena success. My father was a renowned surgeon, my mother a prominent philanthropist. We grew up with every advantage. But within our perfect family, there were unspoken roles. David, the oldest, was the heir apparent, the successful lawyer who followed in our father's professional footsteps. Michael, the youngest, was the charming, creative one, the fun uncle who ran a boutique marketing firm. And I, Catherine, the middle child and only daughter, was the caretaker, the responsible one, the one who never married, who never had children, who poured all of her energy into her career and her family. My career was not as flashy as theirs, but it was far more successful. I was a wealth manager, a very, very good one. I had taken the significant inheritance my parents had left me and, through shrewd, quiet investing, had turned it into a fortune that dwarfed my brother's comfortable wealth. This was my greatest secret. They saw me as Aunt Catherine, who had a good job in finance. They had no idea I was the financial powerhouse of the family. They lived in their beautiful mortgage-to-the-hilt homes, driving their leased German cars, a lifestyle propped up by the constant low-level anxiety of keeping up appearances. I lived in a modest, beautifully appointed condo that I owned outright, and my net worth was a number they couldn't even comprehend. My brothers are not bad men. They are just products of a privileged, patriarchal system that has taught them that the contributions of the women in their lives are simply part of the background scenery. Their wives, Susan and Karen, were friendly but distant, absorbed in the competitive world of private school fundraisers and tennis lessons. They saw me as a built-in, free babysitter and a reliable source of lavish birthday gifts for their children. Over the years, their casual, unthinking dismissal of me had become a habit. I was the one who was expected to host holidays when my mother got older, the one they called when they needed financial advice, which they rarely took, the one who was always, always there. My presence was a given, and therefore it had no value. What is this hidden fortune that could change everything? Part 3. I left the party quietly. No dramatic exit. I just slipped away while everyone was distracted by the fireworks. The drive home to my quiet condo in South Pasadena was a blur. The next morning, I did not wake up with a feeling of rage. I woke up with a profound sense of peace. The decision had been made, and the path forward was clear. The conflict began with a single, quiet action. I called my estate lawyer, a sharp, empathetic woman named Elena who had managed my family's affairs for years. "Elena," I said, my voice calm. "I need to make some significant changes to my will and the family trust." There was a pause. Elena knew my family. She knew the dynamics. "I see," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Let's schedule a meeting." The primary obstacle in my plan was my own heart. 4 years, my entire financial plan, the ultimate purpose of the fortune I had built, was centered on my nieces and nephews. I had set up a massive, complex, irrevocable trust, designed to pay for their college educations, their first homes, their futures. It was the legacy of the rich, childless aunt. It was my way of showing my love, of ensuring my place in the family's future, even after I was gone. Dismantling that felt like a betrayal of the children, who were innocent in all of this. But as I sat with Elena in her quiet, book-lined office, I had a revelation. Was I really doing it for them? Or was I doing it to buy my place in a family that had never made room for me? Was it an act of love, or a desperate, posthumous attempt to be seen? "They don't see you, Catherine," Elena said gently, as if reading my mind. "They see your money. Or, more accurately, the future value of your money. There is a difference." That was the moment the conflict shifted. It was no longer about punishing my brothers. It was about liberating myself, and my fortune, from their unthinking, entitled grasp. The battle was not for their recognition, but for my own self-worth. Will a secret from the past turn the tables? Part 4. The process of restructuring my estate was complex and took several weeks. This was the ticking clock of my quiet rebellion. My brothers, oblivious, continued on with their lives. They sent a family-wide text a week later with a link to the online gallery of the photos from the party. The subject line was, "More Great Memories." I clicked the link. There they were, in a dozen professionally shot, beautifully lit photographs, a perfect, happy family. Without me. It was the final, stinging confirmation that I had done the right thing. A crucial subplot developed around my mother. She was getting older, and her care was becoming more expensive. 4 years, the 3 of us had split her expenses equally. But I knew that both of my brothers privately grumbled about the cost. They saw it as a drain on their lifestyle funds. I decided to make my first move. I called them both on a conference call. "I've been thinking about Mom's care," I said. "And I've decided I'd like to take over the full financial responsibility for it. All of it. Her caregivers, her medical bills, everything. You two don't have to worry about it anymore." Their reaction was not, as I had hoped, one of gratitude for my shouldering the burden. It was one of immediate, palpable relief. "Wow, Kath, are you sure?" David had said. That's incredibly generous. It would really take the pressure off." They didn't ask why. They didn't question if I could afford it. They just accepted. They had just unknowingly given me exactly what I wanted: complete control over our mother's well-being, and a clear legal record of them abdicating their financial responsibility. It was the first quiet severing of our shared ties. It was also a test, and they had failed it spectacularly. But will the next event shock everyone? Part 5. The final legal document was a masterpiece of quiet, devastating precision. Elena had earned her fee. It was not a simple change to my will. It was the creation of a new, separate, and entirely private entity, the Catherine Miller Foundation for Arts and Education. I was liquidating the massive trust one had set up for my nieces and nephews. Every last dollar, every stock, every real estate holding, was being transferred into this new foundation. I would control it for the rest of my life, and upon my death, it would be managed by a board of directors I had handpicked: my lawyer, my financial advisor, and the dean of a local arts college. Its mission would be to provide scholarships and grants to underprivileged students in Southern California. The family legacy I had planned was being completely and irrevocably rerouted. The turning point was the moment I signed the final document. With a single stroke of a pen in Elena's office, I had effectively disinherited my entire family. But it was a secret. There was no legal requirement to inform them. My will, my trust, it was my private business. They would continue on, blissfully unaware, operating under the happy assumption that Aunt Catherine would be securing their children's futures. But I knew that wasn't enough. I needed to make a statement. Not a cruel one, but a clear one. A few weeks later, my mother's 80th birthday was approaching. It was a major milestone, and the family was planning a huge, catered party at David's house. I was, of course, expected to do most of the organizing and a significant portion of the paying. I let them proceed with their plans. Then, a week before the party, I sent a simple, polite email to my brothers and their wives. "Dear all," it read. "For Mom's 80th, I have decided to do something a little different. I will be taking her on a 3-week cruise through the Mediterranean, just the two of us. It's a trip she has always dreamed of. We will be leaving the day before the party. I do hope you all have a wonderful time celebrating without us. I've already paid my share of the catering deposit. All my love, Catherine." How will this shocking secret change their lives forever? This incredible twist has you hooked? Subscribe now for more stories of delicious karma. Part 6. The fallout from my email was immediate and explosive. My phone lit up with a fusillade of frantic texts and angry voicemails. "A cruise? Now. You can't do this," David had yelled in a message. "The party is planned. All our friends are coming. This is completely selfish." Michael was more direct. "What the hell, Kath? You're supposed to be helping. How does this look to everyone?" The immediate consequence was that for the first time in their lives, they had to scramble. They had to handle the logistics, the planning, the paying. But the deeper repercussion was their utter, sputtering incomprehension. My actions did not compute. I had always been the reliable one, the one who put the family's needs before her own. This independent, decisive woman who was taking their mother on a luxury cruise without their permission was a stranger to them. I didn't answer their calls. I let them spin in their own self-inflicted chaos. I picked up my mother, who was thrilled beyond words, and we left. As we sat on the balcony of our stateroom, pulling out of the port of Los Angeles, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from my niece, David's oldest daughter, a bright, sensitive girl of 17. Aunt Catherine, I'm really going to miss you at the party, it read. But I hope you and Grandma have the most amazing time. You deserve it. A single, genuine voice of love in a chorus of entitled rage. It was a small, important reminder that this was not about punishing the children. It was about teaching their parents a lesson. Will they overcome this new challenge? Part 7. The 3 weeks on that cruise were a period of profound growth and healing for me. Floating on the impossibly blue waters of the Mediterranean, a world away from the petty dramas of Pasadena, I felt a lifetime of resentment begin to melt away. The challenge was to overcome the habit of being Aunt Catherine. For the first time, I was just Catherine. I had conversations with my mother that had nothing to do with my brothers or her grandchildren. We talked about her youth, about my father, about our hopes and our regrets. I was seeing her not just as my mother, but as a woman, a person, and I was seeing myself the same way. My transformation was quiet, internal. It wasn't a vengeance anymore. That single, cold decision in the wake of the photograph had blossomed into something much more complex and beautiful, a reclamation of my own life. I realized I had spent 40 years waiting for my family to make a space for me at their table, when I had the resources to build my own damn table, and a much nicer one at that. I started to think about my future, a future that was not defined by my family. I thought about the foundation I had created. I thought about the art I could support, the young lives I could change. The anger that had fueled my initial decision was gone, replaced by a quiet, thrilling sense of purpose. I was not just taking myself out of their will. I was writing myself into a new, much better story. But what awaits them in the next confrontation? Part 8. When I returned from the cruise, tan and rested, I found a family in disarray. The party had been a disaster, according to the flurry of passive-aggressive texts. Without me to manage the details, things had fallen apart. More importantly, my absence had created a power vacuum that they were unequipped to fill. They were angry, but they were also lost. They demanded a meeting. A family summit, David had called it, his voice full of self-important drama. They wanted an explanation. They wanted an apology. They wanted me to go back to being the person I was. I agreed to the meeting. It was set for a Sunday afternoon at my condo. I knew this was it. The final confrontation. The moment where the secret I was holding would finally be brought into the light. My preparation was simple. I asked Elena, my lawyer, to be present. As a neutral observer, I told my brothers, a lie they were too self-absorbed to question. When they arrived, I served them coffee in my beautiful, quiet living room. They sat on my couch, a united front of sibling indignation, ready to deliver their lecture. I was ready to deliver mine. The tension was not in what would be said, but in the life-altering knowledge that was about to be revealed. The final confrontation will reveal everything, won't it? Part 9. We need to talk about your behavior, Catherine, David began, taking on the role of the patriarch. This cruise, the lack of communication, it was irresponsible and hurtful to the whole family. We rely on you. That, I said, my voice calm and steady, is the entire problem. I let the words hang in the air. You rely on me. You expect me. But you do not see me. On the 4th of July, you all stood on that lawn, smiling for a photograph, and not a single one of you noticed that I was not in it. You did not just forget me. You erased me. And in that moment, I realized I had to do the same. They stared at me, their expressions a mixture of confusion and dawning indignation. What are you talking about? Erase you? Michael asked. This was the moment. I am talking about my will, I said. I'm talking about the Catherine Miller Family Trust, the one I had established for your children. I turned to Elena, my lawyer. Elena, would you be so kind as to explain the new situation to my brothers? Elena, in her calm, professional voice, laid out the climax of my story. She explained that the trust for my nieces and nephews, with its multi-million-dollar endowment, had been legally and irrevocably dissolved. She explained the creation of the new foundation, its purpose, and its board of directors. She explained that my entire fortune, a fortune they had always assumed was a safety net for their children, would now be used to send other people's children to college. The vengeance was in the quiet, legal, and absolute finality of it all. As Elena spoke, I watched my brothers' faces. I saw the confusion morph into disbelief, and then into pure, unadulterated panic. They weren't just losing money. They were losing a future they had taken for granted. They had excluded me from a single photograph, a single moment. And in response, I had excluded them from my entire lifetime. But how will this change their future? Part 10. The meeting ended in a storm of shouting and accusations. They called me cruel, vindictive, insane. They threatened to sue, to contest my decision. Elena calmly informed them that the legal structure was airtight. There was nothing they could do. I had not cut them out of a will they could fight. I had moved the assets while I was still alive. They had no claim. They stormed out of my condo, leaving a trail of impotent fury in their wake. The long-term consequences for them were profound. They were forced, for the first time, to confront the reality of their own financial limitations. The private schools, the club memberships, the second homes, all of it was now predicated on their own success, not the future promise of mine. They had to learn to live within their means. I did not see them for a long time. But I heard through my niece that the dynamic in their homes began to change. The fight had forced them to look at their own lives, their own priorities. My relationship with my mother deepened, and the last years of her life were filled with a peace and a closeness we had never known. The emotional resolution for me was the quiet, liberating knowledge that I had finally, truly, put myself first. My life was my own, my fortune was my own, and my legacy would be one of generosity to those who were truly in need, not to those who simply felt entitled. A year later, on the 4th of July, I was not at a family barbecue. I was hosting a luncheon for the first 10 recipients of the Catherine Miller Foundation Scholarship. 10 bright, grateful, and ambitious young people. My niece, David's daughter, was there. She had volunteered to help. She came up to me and gave me a hug. "I'm so proud of you, Aunt Catherine," she whispered. "This is a much better family photo." I looked around at the smiling faces, and I knew she was right. Being taken for granted by the people you love is one of the most painful, invisible wounds. This story is a powerful reminder to value the people who show up for you, and for those who are always showing up, to know your own worth. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is to remove yourself from the picture. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Share your story in the comments below. If this story of a woman reclaiming her legacy resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more emotional tales of justice.